Wet snow fell in big flakes, melting on her eyelashes. The silence of the Redwood National Park was deceptive. It was full of sounds for those who knew how to listen. Anastasia froze, peering at the silhouette among the towering trees. A man was tied to an ancient redwood with thick ropes, his head slumped helplessly on his chest. Her first thought was to retreat, to hide deeper in the forest, where they wouldn't find her. Her grandpa had taught her, strangers bring trouble. But Grandpa wouldn't say anything anymore. He hadn't woken up 3 days ago, when the morning painted their cabin with soft pink light. Anastasia took a cautious step forward, then another. The man was in expensive but torn clothing. His face was covered in stubble, and dried blood caked his temple. Hearing the crunch of twigs, he lifted his head. His eyes, heavy with exhaustion and pain, widened. "Little girl," he croaked, "what are you doing here?" Anastasia didn't answer. 9 years of living with her grandpa in the wilderness had taught her caution. She remembered his words. Speech is silver, silence is golden, and an unnecessary word in the wilderness can be your last. "Please," the man's voice wavered. "Water. Do you have any water?" She watched him, unmoving. The man was large, but now helpless, like a bear caught in a trap. She had water. In an old canteen her grandpa always carried hunting. Now the canteen belonged to her, as did the knife hidden in her pants pocket. "Who tied you up?" she asked softly, trying to make her voice sound firm. "People," he coughed, "who want my position, my assets." "Your position in Redwood National Park?" The man smiled weakly. "No, my position in the big world. My name is Alex Volkov. And yours?" "Anastasia," she replied after a pause. The name felt strange, spoken aloud. For the last 3 years, only Grandpa had called her by her name, and even then, rarely. More often, just little one or granddaughter. She took another step forward, but not close enough for him to reach her. She opened the canteen and offered it to him, holding her arm out full length. Alex drank greedily, water dripping down his chin, soaking into his shirt collar. "Thank you," he exhaled. "I thought I was going to die here." Anastasia took back the canteen. The sun was already setting. Soon the park would be plunged into darkness. Not the best time for a lone girl. "I'm leaving," she said, backing away. "Wait." His voice was filled with fear. "You can't just leave. Untie me, please. They won't come back for me. They left me to die." "Why should I believe you?" Alex lowered his head. "You shouldn't. But I'm asking you. I'll repay you when I get out of here. I have resources." "I don't need your money," Anastasia cut in, and something in her voice made the man look at her more intently. Not like he was looking at a child, like she was an equal. "Then what do you want?" Anastasia was silent. She didn't know the answer herself. 3 days ago, she had a home and a grandpa. Now, only a satchel of belongings, a knife, and an uncertain future. She had left the cabin when she realized her grandpa wouldn't wake up again. She needed to find people, to report. But the forest had closed in, the trails twisted, and now, this strange man from another world. "I'll think about it," she finally said. "For now, we need to find shelter for the night." "You'll come back?" His voice held hope. Anastasia didn't answer. Turning, she disappeared among the trees, as if dissolving into the twilight. Alex was left alone, listening to the fading crunch of twigs under her feet. The morning was cold. Anastasia had spent the night curled up in the hollow of an ancient cedar, clutching her grandpa's keepsake box to her chest, Inside were the only photograph of her mother, whom she'd never met, a pressed flower, a gift from her only friend, the park ranger's daughter who sometimes visited in summer, and a compass, cracked but still working. Sunlight pierced through the thick branches. Anastasia emerged from her shelter, rubbing her numb hands. Her first thought was of the man tied to the tree. Was he alive? Had the people who left him returned? She gathered her belongings and headed towards yesterday's meeting spot, trying to tread lightly. Her grandpa had taught her to walk silently through the forest, to blend in, to become part of it. Alex was there, his head bowed, eyes closed. For a moment, Anastasia thought she was too late, but then his chest rose with a heavy sigh. "You came," he whispered, not opening his eyes, as if sensing her presence. "I came," she replied, taking out the canteen. "Here, drink." This time she moved closer, raising the water to his lips herself. Trust? No, just common sense. If he died, she'd be utterly alone in the wilderness, with no chance of finding her way back to people. "Thank you," he said after drinking. "I'd lost hope." "Who are you?" Anastasia asked directly. The real answer. Alex looked at her with a lengthy gaze, as if assessing her. "I own a logging company, Timberline East. Competitors kidnapped me. They want my business. They thought I'd be found quickly, that negotiations would start. But something went wrong," he said with a bitter laugh. "Apparently, I'm not as valuable as I thought." Anastasia listened, not interrupting. The words sounded true, but there was something else, unsaid. "And you?" he asked softly. "How are you here, alone in the park?" "I lived with my grandpa," she replied after a pause. "Over there." She vaguely waved her hand towards the eastern slope of the mountain. "He died 4 days ago. I went looking for people and got lost." Alex exhaled. The girl's grief was simple and deafening in its clarity. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "So sorry." Anastasia shrugged. "He was old. He said he'd be leaving soon. I just didn't think it would be so soon." She took a piece of jerky from her satchel and broke it in half. "Here," she offered half to Alex. "You need your strength. We have a long journey ahead." "We?" He looked at her with hope. Anastasia nodded and took her knife from her pocket. The blade glinted dully in the sun. "I'll free you, but you'll help me get out of here. To people. Deal?" Alex nodded. "Deal." She came close and began to saw at the ropes. They were thick, tough, and the knife made slow progress. Anastasia worked silently, concentrating. When the last rope gave way, Alex groaned and sank to the ground. His legs wouldn't support him after long hours of immobility. "Give me a minute," he mumbled, rubbing his wrists. Deep red gouges on his skin looked painful. Anastasia stepped back a few paces, watching. She still gripped the knife, ready to defend herself if needed. "How old are you?" Alex asked, stretching his cramped muscles. 9, almost 10, she added proudly. "And you lived in the wilderness all this time?" "As long as I can remember. First with my mom and grandpa. Then Mom left for the city when I was little and never came back. It was just Grandpa and me." Alex slowly got to his feet, swaying. "We need to go," he said, looking around. "Which way is the nearest town? Do you know?" Anastasia shook her head. "Grandpa knew. I don't. We rarely went to town. Maybe once a year." Alex frowned. The situation was worse than he thought. "I have a compass," Anastasia said, pulling out the worn metal box. "Grandpa said the big road is to the south." "Good," Alex nodded. "Then we'll head south. But first," he looked at his broken shoes, We need to find water, and if possible, food. I know a place, Anastasia said. There's an old hunting cabin not far from here. There's a stream there, and maybe some canned goods, if the hunters left any. She turned and walked ahead without looking back, confident he would follow. Alex hurried after her, limping. A strange pair moved through the forest. A small figure in a faded jacket, too big for her fragile body, and a tall man in a torn business suit with bruises on his face and tangled hair. The cabin was a dilapidated shack with a leaky roof, but even such a shelter seemed a blessing after a night spent under the open sky. Inside, it smelled damp and of old wood. In one corner stood a crooked stove, and next to it a roughly built table and 2 benches. "Hunters stop here," Anastasia explained, looking around. "Grandpa said you should always leave something for the next traveler in places like this. Matches, salt, canned goods." She began to examine the shelves and drawers methodically, like an adult. Alex watched her with growing surprise. This 9-year-old girl knew more about survival in the wilderness than he had in his entire life. "Found it!" she exclaimed, pulling out a dusty can of stew and a box of matches. "And there's salt, even tea." Alex sank onto a bench, feeling waves of exhaustion wash over him. "You're incredible," he said softly. Anastasia shrugged. "Just normal. I just grew up here." She went out and returned with an armload of kindling, then set about lighting the stove. Her movements were confident, practiced. Soon fire crackled in the stove, and water boiled in a sooty pot on a makeshift stand. "You said you have a company," Anastasia said without turning around. "Is it big?" Alex nodded, then realized she couldn't see. "Yes, quite big. Over 200 people work there." "And everyone listens to you?" "In theory," he smiled. "In practice, not always." "Like the ones who tied you up?" Alex's face darkened. "It's hard to explain. Adult games, money, power. Sometimes people betray those they should be grateful to." "That's not hard," Anastasia countered. "It's foolish." Alex laughed, for the first time in days. "You're right. It is foolish." Anastasia opened the can of stew with her knife and emptied the contents into the pot of boiling water. She added a pinch of salt and dried herbs she pulled from her satchel. "Grandpa said food should bring joy, even if there isn't much of it." Alex watched her conjure the improvised soup and felt something inside him shifting. For so many years he had chased after things, money, status, power. And now he sat in a ruined cabin in the middle of the wilderness, and his life depended on a 9-year-old girl who spoke simple yet profoundly important truths. "Do you have family?" Anastasia asked suddenly. "There, in the city?" Alex flinched. "A son, Ronnie. He's 16. A wife, an ex-wife. We separated 3 years ago." "Do you miss them?" Alex pondered. Not the polite answer, but the real one. "My son, yes, very much. My wife, we were strangers long before the divorce." Anastasia nodded, as if understanding. She stirred the soup with a wooden spoon found in a drawer. "Grandpa said Mom loved the city more than us. That's why she never came back." Alex didn't know what to say. What words could comfort a child abandoned by her own mother? He simply watched as Anastasia poured the steaming soup into 2 metal mugs found among the cabin's meager utensils. "Careful, it's hot," she warned, handing him a mug. They ate in silence. The soup was simple, but incredibly delicious for a man who hadn't eaten for almost 2 days. Or was it the circumstances? The silence of the wilderness, The crackling fire in the stove, the presence of this peculiar girl with her unchildlike gaze. "Thank you," Alex said, drinking the last drops. "That was wonderful." Anastasia smiled, for the first time since they met. The smile transformed her face, making it truly childish, radiant. "There's more," she said, reaching for his mug. When darkness fell, they settled down for the night. Anastasia spread some spruce branches on the floor, covered with an old tarp found in the corner. "Not the best bed, but better than the bare ground," she said practically. Alex lay down, feeling his whole body ache. Anastasia settled nearby, but not too close, with her satchel under her head as a pillow. "Anastasia," he called softly, "when we get out of here, what will you do?" She was silent for a long time, so long that Alex thought she had already fallen asleep. "I don't know," she finally replied. "They'll probably send me to an orphanage. Grandpa said that's what happens to children without parents." There was no fear or sadness in her voice, only calm acceptance of the inevitable. And that was the most frightening thing. What if? Alex hesitated, surprised by the thought that came to him. What if there was another option? "What kind?" "I could look after you temporarily until your relatives are found." Anastasia turned to him. In the gloom, her eyes seemed like dark pools. "Why would you do that?" A simple question, a complex answer. "You saved my life," he said, "and I think we could help each other." Anastasia didn't reply. She turned away, curling into a ball, clutching her satchel to her chest. "Good night," she said softly. "Good night, little one," Alex answered, staring at the ceiling and listening to the wind whistling through the trees outside the cabin. The morning began with an unsettling rustle. Anastasia awoke instantly like a wild animal and touched Alex's shoulder. "Quiet," she whispered. "Someone's outside." Alex tensed, listening. Indeed, someone was moving around the cabin, breaking twigs. Steps too heavy for a forest animal. "People," he breathed out. "Maybe hunters?" Anastasia shook her head. "Hunters would call out. They'd knock. This is someone else." They hunkered down, barely breathing. The footsteps approached the door, then voices broke out, muffled but discernible. "He's got to be around here somewhere. Tracks lead this way. Maybe the wolves got him already. Would save us the trouble." A rough, unpleasant laugh. "The boss said to find a body. No body, no pay." Alex paled. Anastasia stared at him with wide eyes. "Is that them? The ones who tied you up?" she whispered almost inaudibly. He nodded. His gaze darted around the cabin, searching for a weapon, an exit, anything. Anastasia tugged his sleeve and pointed to the back wall. There, behind the stove, a narrow crawl space was visible, barely noticeable if you didn't know where to look. "Emergency exit," she whispered, "for hunters, in case a grizzly comes through the front." Without wasting a moment, she quickly gathered her satchel and crawled towards the opening. Alex followed her, trying to move as quietly as possible, despite his aching muscles and joints. The crawl space led them to the back of the cabin, hidden by dense fir trees. Anastasia pressed a finger to her lips and pointed a direction. They began to retreat cautiously, bending low and trying not to step on dry twigs. Suddenly, the cabin door burst open with a crash. Cries of disappointment echoed through the forest. "Run!" Alex commanded, grabbing Anastasia's hand. They plunged through the thicket, not choosing a path. From behind came shouts and snapping branches. Their pursuers had discovered their absence and were in hot pursuit. Alex ran, stumbling over roots and rocks, dragging Anastasia behind him. His lungs burned, his legs gave out, but fear drove him forward. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard the girl's voice. "Not that way. It's a bog." He stopped abruptly, nearly falling. Before them lay a seemingly harmless clearing, overgrown with moss and sparse shrubs. "Go around to the right," Anastasia commanded, pointing the way, "over the rocks." They moved along the edge of the bog, leaping from stone to stone. The shouts of their pursuers grew closer. "They're catching up," Alex gasped. Anastasia looked around and pointed to a thicket of tall reeds. "Through there. There's a stream. We'll walk in the water. They'll lose our trail." Alex marveled at her composure. They descended into the cold water, which reached Anastasia's waist and moved upstream, fighting the current. "How do you know all this?" Alex asked when they had put a good distance between them. "Grandpa taught me," she replied simply. "He said, in the wilderness, you have to be smarter than a grizzly, a wolf, and a man." They walked in the water until the shouts of their pursuers faded in the distance. Only then did Anastasia point to the bank, where a fallen tree formed a natural bridge. "We get out here. They won't think to look for us upstream," Anastasia said, clinging to the wet roots. "They'll think we went downstream towards the village." Alex helped her onto the bank. Her small hands were icy, her lips blue with cold. His own clothes were soaked through, water squelching in his expensive but now completely useless boots. "We need to get warm," he said, looking around, "and change clothes, otherwise we'll freeze." "I know a place," Anastasia nodded. "Over that ridge there's a dugout. An old one," Grandpa said, "left from the war. It even has a stove." She pointed to a ridge of hills visible in the distance. "Is it far?" "About 2 hours if we go fast." Alex looked at the sky. The sun was already past noon. "Will we make it before dark?" "We should." Anastasia shivered despite herself. "Let's go. We can't stay wet." They set off. Anastasia walked ahead, confidently choosing a path through the undergrowth. Her small figure seemed part of this ancient forest. She knew every trail, every feature of the terrain. Alex followed her, mentally thanking fate for meeting precisely this child in the middle of the wilderness. "Who are those people?" Anastasia suddenly asked without turning around. "The ones looking for you." Alex sighed. "Mercenaries. People who were paid to get rid of me." Who paid? The question that had tormented him for the past few days. Who in his circle wanted him dead so badly that they resorted to kidnapping and murder? "I think—" He stumbled, not knowing if he should tell a child such a thing. "I think it's my deputy, Victor Sampson. He's wanted my position for a long time, or competitors from Forest Corp. We've had a long-standing feud with them." "What about your son?" Anastasia asked unexpectedly. Alex stopped mid-stride. "What?" "Your son," she repeated, turning around. "You said he's grown. Could it be him?" Alex felt instinctively that his blood ran cold. Ronnie, the sullen 16-year-old with whom he'd barely communicated in recent years. He'd been too busy building an empire to notice his own son growing up. "No," he shook his head. "I don't think so. We're not very close, but it wouldn't come to that." Anastasia shrugged. "Grandpa said the most terrifying enemies are those you consider friends, because they know where to strike." Words too wise for her age made Alex ponder. Could Ronnie be involved? No, impossible. The boy might hate him for his lack of attention, for divorcing his mother, for always being busy, but not to that extent. "Look!" Anastasia exclaimed, pointing ahead. There it is, the dugout. Among the trees, a sloping hill was visible with a door, blackened with age, built directly into the slope. The place was perfectly camouflaged. If not for Anastasia, Alex would have walked past without even noticing the shelter. They approached the door. Anastasia pulled the rusty handle, and with a quiet creak, the door opened. "Careful, there might be someone inside," she whispered. They froze, listening. Silence. Only drops of water fell from the dugout's roof, hitting the ground. "Seems empty," Alex said, taking a step forward. Inside, the dugout was more spacious than it looked from the outside. A roughly built table, 2 benches, a small pot-belly stove in the corner. Bunches of dried herbs hung on the walls. Dusty jars stood on the shelves. "No one's been here for a long time," Anastasia noted, running her finger across the table and leaving a trail in the dust. Alex looked around more closely. In the corner, he noticed a chest covered with an old tarp. "What could be in there?" he asked, pointing to the find. Anastasia walked over and pulled back the tarp. Inside were old blankets, some tools, and, to their surprise, clothes. "Look." Anastasia pulled out a faded but sturdy jacket and pants. "These will be too big for you, but better than being wet." She pulled out another bundle, a child's jacket, worn but warm. "And something for me, too," she smiled. Grandpa was right. In the wilderness, help can always be found if you know where to look. They quickly changed, hanging their wet clothes on a line stretched near the stove. Alex built a fire using dry kindling, neatly stacked in a box next to the stove. Soon the dugout was warm, smelling of smoke and dried herbs. Anastasia found the last of their food supplies in her satchel, a piece of jerky and a handful of dried berries. She divided them equally, offering half to Alex. "Not much, but it'll get us to morning," she said matter-of-factly. They sat on the benches near the stove, listening to the crackling logs. Outside the dugout, the wind howled. The weather was turning. "Tell me about your grandpa," Alex asked, chewing the tough meat. Anastasia looked up, surprised by the request. "About Grandpa?" She paused, collecting her thoughts. "His name was Mikhail Petrovich, but everyone in the wilderness knew him as Grandpa Michael. He was gruff, didn't like to talk unnecessarily, but fair." She closed her eyes, remembering. He knew a lot, about herbs, about animals, about the weather. He knew how to find his way by the stars, how to tell north by the moss. "He taught me. He said that in the wilderness, knowledge is life." "And how did you end up here? Why did you live alone?" Anastasia shrugged. "I don't know. Grandpa didn't like to talk about it. He only said that once, a long time ago, he had a normal life, a job, an apartment in the city. Then something happened, and he went into the wilderness. And then Mom came to him, with me, when I was little." She fell silent, looking at the fire. "And then Mom left," Alex finished for her. Anastasia nodded. "She said she'd be back in a week. 2 years passed." There was no resentment or bitterness in her voice, only a statement of fact. Alex felt a wave of anger rise within him towards the woman who could abandon her child. And then he thought of himself. Was he any better? How many times had he canceled meetings with Ronnie because of work? How many important moments had he missed? "And you?" Anastasia asked. "Why don't you live with your son?" Alex sighed. "I worked a lot, all the time. I thought I was securing his future, but in reality, I just wasn't there when he needed me." "And he got angry?" "Yes, and his mother too. At some point she said she had enough. She took Ronnie and left." And you didn't go after them? A simple question, a painful answer. No, I decided the company was more important, he said with a bitter laugh. Foolish, right? Anastasia didn't answer. She took the keepsake box from her satchel, which Alex had noticed earlier. She opened it, gazing at the contents for a long time. What's in there? He asked softly. Everything I have, she replied just as softly. Mom's photo, the only one. Grandpa wanted to throw it away when she didn't come back, but I wouldn't let him. Grandpa's compass. And this. She took out a pressed flower, holding it carefully in her palm. Lisa gave this to me. The park ranger's daughter. She came in the summer 2 years ago. We played together. She was the only girl I ever befriended. Alex looked at these treasures, pitiful to an outsider's eye, priceless to the little owner. We'll find your mom, he said suddenly, surprised by his own words. When we get out of here, if you want to. Anastasia looked up at him, and there was such mature wisdom in her eyes that Alex involuntarily looked away. Why? She asked simply. She didn't want me, so I shouldn't want her either. Alex was at a loss for words. He looked at this little girl, forced to grow up too soon, and felt something shifting inside him. His usual priorities, values, guidelines, everything was moving, rearranging. You are very brave, he finally said. Braver than many adults I know. Anastasia smiled, fleetingly, but sincerely. Not brave. It's just there's no other way. She yawned, and suddenly her face became truly childlike. Tired, sleepy. Let's sleep, Alex suggested. Tomorrow we have to keep going. They spread the blankets found in the chest directly on the floor by the stove. Anastasia curled up, placing her satchel under her head. Alex lay beside her, gazing at the dugout ceiling. Good night, Alex, Anastasia whispered, already falling asleep. Good night, little one, he replied softly. The morning greeted them with a gray sky and drizzling rain. Anastasia looked out of the dugout and frowned. Bad. Our tracks will be clear in the rain. Will be easy to follow. Alex approached her, zipping up the jacket he'd found. What do you suggest? Follow the stream, like yesterday, then over the rocks. It'll be harder for them to find our trail. They gathered their few belongings. Anastasia neatly folded the found blankets back into the chest. For the next travelers, she explained, noticing Alex's questioning look. As Grandpa taught. They stepped out into the drizzling rain. Cold drops ran down their collars, but after a warm night, it wasn't as bad. We go that way, Anastasia pointed southeast. If the compass is right, there should be a road there. They set off, treading carefully on the wet ground. The forest around them seemed hushed, alert. Even the birds were silent, hidden from the bad weather. Do you think those people are still looking for us? Alex asked after they'd covered a few miles. Anastasia nodded. Definitely. If they need your body, they won't give up. She spoke about it so calmly, as if discussing the weather, not murder. Alex shuddered. How do you? He stammered, searching for words. How does a child have such thoughts? Anastasia looked at him with slight surprise. I live in the wilderness. Here, it's simple. You're either a hunter or prey. No one gives up once they start hunting. Alex shook his head. This girl combined childlike spontaneity with the frightening wisdom of someone who had seen life in its harshest forms. They walked all day, stopping only for short breaks. Anastasia confidently led them through the thicket, checking her compass occasionally. By evening, The rain intensified, turning into a real downpour. They were soaked through, despite their jackets. "We need shelter," Alex said, feeling Anastasia shivering with cold. She looked around, squinting through the curtain of rain. "There," she pointed to something only she could see. "Looks like a big tree. We can wait it out under it." They headed for the spot she indicated. Indeed, a huge fir spread its branches, creating a kind of canopy. It was relatively dry underneath. "It'll do for a while," Anastasia said, shaking water from her jacket. "But we can't start a fire. Everything's wet." They sat down, leaning their backs against the tree trunk. Alex put an arm around Anastasia's shoulders, trying to warm her with his body heat. "We'll get out of this," he said, looking at the wall of rain around their shelter. "I promise." Anastasia didn't answer, just leaned closer, shivering with cold. They sat like that until dark. The rain didn't stop. At some point, Anastasia fell asleep, exhausted from the long journey. Alex held her, listening to her steady breathing. His thoughts swirled about the company, about his son, about the people who wanted him dead, and about the little girl who was now sleeping trustingly, curled against him. What would happen to her when they got out of the wilderness? An orphanage, a foster home, or would her mother reappear, deciding she was now ready to be a parent? He didn't notice when he too dozed off, lulled by the monotonous sound of the rain. The awakening was abrupt. Anastasia jumped up, breaking free from his embrace. "Quiet," she whispered, pressing a finger to her lips. Alex tensed, listening. At first, nothing but the sound of the rain. Then, voices, distant but approaching, and the flicker of flashlights between the trees. "They found us," he exhaled. "How?" "Dogs." Anastasia pointed to the dark silhouettes running ahead of the people with flashlights. "They tracked us by scent." "What do we do?" Anastasia looked around. Her gaze was focused, assessing. "We can't run. With dogs, they'll catch us quickly. We need to—" She fell silent, biting her lip. Then she nodded resolutely at some thoughts of her own. "Listen carefully. See that crevice between the rocks?" She pointed to a barely visible shadow among some nearby stones. "There's a passage there, narrow, hard for an adult to crawl through, but possible. Go in there. There should be a cave inside. Grandpa told me about it." "What about you?" "I'll distract them. I'll run the other way. Then I'll come back for you." Alex grabbed her shoulders. "No, that's too dangerous. We go together." Anastasia shook her head. "They're looking for you, not me. If they catch a little girl, they won't do anything. But if they find you—" She didn't finish, but the meaning was clear. Alex looked at her, unable to believe that a child was offering to sacrifice herself for his safety. "I won't leave you," he said firmly. "We'll get through this together." The voices were getting closer. There was no time for arguments. "All right," Anastasia nodded. "Then let's run together. To the crevice. I go first, you follow me, and on my signal. Get ready." She tensed, like a spring ready to release at any moment. "Now!" she cried and lunged forward. Alex dashed after her. They sped through the rain and darkness, stumbling over roots and rocks. Cries erupted behind them. They had been spotted. "There they are! Get them!" The barking of dogs, the cracking of branches, the pounding of feet. It all merged into a cacophony of sounds, urging the fugitives onward. The crevice turned out to be closer than it seemed. Anastasia dived into it like a small, agile fish. Alex followed her, painstakingly squeezing himself between the rocks. His shoulders scraped against the walls, but adrenaline dulled the pain. Inside, there really was a small cave, dry, with a sandy floor and a low ceiling. They pressed themselves against the far wall, breathing heavily. Outside, the voices of their pursuers could be heard. Where did they go? The dogs lost the scent. The rain washed it away. Search around. They couldn't have gone far. Flashlight beams flickered at the entrance to the crevice, but fortunately, no one noticed the narrow passage between the stones. Time stretched on endlessly. They sat in the dark, afraid to move, barely breathing. Finally, the voices began to fade. "Let's go further south. Maybe they headed for the road." "The boss won't be happy." "Shut up and search." Gradually, the sounds died down, but Anastasia still didn't move, listening intently. "They might have left an ambush," she whispered. "Let's wait a bit longer." Alex nodded. Now, a 9-year-old girl was his guide, his protector. A strange feeling for an adult man, accustomed to giving orders and making decisions. They stayed in the cave until dawn. The rain had stopped, and gray morning light filtered through the crack. "Seems like they're gone," Anastasia finally said, cautiously peeking outside. "But we need to go a different way. They'll be sweeping the road south." "Where then?" "East. There's a village there, too. Further, but safer." They emerged from the cave. The forest around them was wet and hushed after the night's rain. Anastasia checked her compass and pointed a direction. "That way, and quickly. We need to get as far as possible before they come back." They set off, trying to move fast, but silently. Anastasia chose a route over firm ground, avoiding mud where tracks could be left. By midday, the weather had improved. The sun appeared, birds began to sing. The wilderness seemed to come alive after the night storm. "The river should be close," Anastasia said, looking at the sun. "If we follow it, we might reach the village by evening." "How do you know?" "Grandpa told me. He knew the whole wilderness like the back of his hand." She fell silent, and a shadow of sadness crossed her face. Alex understood. She was only beginning to realize that Grandpa was gone, that her whole life had irrevocably changed. "Tell me more about your grandpa," he asked, wanting to distract her. "What was he like?" Anastasia walked on without turning, but began to speak, softly, evenly. "He was fair, strict, but not unkind. He taught me everything, to read, to write, to count. We had books, old, worn, but real ones. In the evenings he would read aloud to me, about travelers, about distant lands." She paused, then added quieter, "He said I should know more about the world than he did, that I shouldn't spend my whole life in the wilderness like him." Alex felt his heart clench. This gruff hermit, who had withdrawn from the world, still wanted a different destiny for his granddaughter. "We'll fulfill his wish," Alex said firmly. "When we get out of here, I'll help you, with education, with a home, with everything you need." Anastasia stopped and turned to him. A question was in her eyes. "Why do you want to help? You don't know me." Alex knelt down to be at her eye level. "I know enough to understand. You're an amazing girl, Anastasia. Brave, smart, strong. You saved my life. And—" He hesitated, choosing his words. "And I want to correct my mistakes. I wasn't a good father to Ronnie. Maybe I can be a good friend to you." Anastasia looked at him for a long time, studying him. Then she nodded, as if making a decision. "All right, but first, we need to survive." She turned and walked on. Alex followed her, feeling a strange relief, as if he had just concluded the most important deal of his life. Soon enough, they did reach a river, turbulent and swollen after the rain. A faint path ran along its bank. "Animal path," Anastasia explained. "Everyone comes to the water, animals and people." They walked along the river, keeping to the trail. It was easier going now. No need to push through bushes or bypass fallen trees. "Do you think those people are still looking for us?" Alex asked after a long silence. Anastasia nodded. "Certainly. But it will be harder for them now. The rain washed away the tracks, and we changed direction." "What if they get to the village before us?" Anastasia thought about it. "Unlikely. They're city folk. They don't know the wilderness. They'll take the long way by compass. We'll be first." Alex admired her confidence. At 9 years old, she analyzed the situation better than many adults. By evening, the river had widened, and the current was calmer. And suddenly, Anastasia stopped, pointing ahead. "Look!" In the distance, on a bend in the river, house roofs were visible. Smoke from chimneys rose into the evening sky. "A village," Alex breathed out. "We made it." Anastasia didn't share his excitement. She stood tense like a violin string. "What's wrong?" he asked, noticing her state. I don't know what it'll be like there," she admitted softly. "With people. I barely remember what it's like to live among people." Alex knelt beside her. "Don't be afraid. I'll be with you, I promise." She nodded, but fear was still in her eyes. Alex extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she placed her small palm in his. Her little fingers, hardened by life in the wilderness, now seemed so fragile. "We'll get through this together," he said. "I won't let anyone harm you." They moved towards the village, a strange pair, a tall man in worn clothes and a little girl with an unchildlike gaze. As they approached the first houses, Anastasia clung closer to Alex, as if wanting to hide behind his back. The village was small. A few dozen houses, a store, a school, a local administration office. People they encountered looked at the unusual travelers with surprise. "Where's the sheriff? The police?" Alex asked an elderly woman hanging laundry. She looked them up and down, her gaze lingering on Anastasia. "Our sheriff's in the county seat today." "What happened?" "We need help. I was kidnapped, and we barely made it out of the wilderness." The woman gasped, pressing a hand to her mouth. "Good heavens, come in, both of you. I'll make tea, you'll warm up, and my husband will go to the office to report it." She swung open the gate, inviting them into the yard. Anastasia squeezed Alex's hand tighter, clearly reluctant to go. "Don't be afraid, child," the woman said softly. "No one will harm you. I'm Ann Smith, the local medical assistant. And who might you be?" "Anastasia," the girl replied softly, almost a whisper. "A lovely name." Ann Smith nodded. "Come into the house. Don't stand in the cold." Inside, it was warm and cozy. The stove, which took up almost a third of the room, radiated heat. On the table, covered with an embroidered tablecloth, stood a vase of dried apples and a jar of honey. "Sit down," the hostess invited. "I'll put the kettle on, and you can tell me what happened." While Alex briefly recounted the events, Anastasia sat silently, looking around the room. Her gaze drifted over the objects, so ordinary for a village house and so alien to her. Framed photographs, a television, a clock on the wall, knitted doilies on the dresser. "And the girl?" Ann Smith asked when Alex finished his story. "Was she with you when you were taken?" "No." Alex looked at Anastasia. She lived in the wilderness with her grandpa. He died a few days ago. Anastasia went to find help and found me." Ann Smith gasped. "Good heavens, the poor thing, alone in the wilderness. And where are her parents?" Anastasia lowered her eyes. "Mom left," she said softly. "A long time ago. There's no one else." The woman shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "Well, I never—" She turned to Alex. "So what now? What about the girl?" Alex didn't have time to answer. The door opened, and an older man in a warm jacket entered. "Called the county seat," he announced. "Sheriff Johnson, our deputy, is already on her way. She'll be here in an hour." He looked at the guests. "Stephen Miller," he introduced himself, "the local mayor. Ann says you're in trouble?" Alex had to repeat his story. Anastasia remained silent, but now she moved closer to him, as if seeking protection from the many questions and stares. Half an hour later, the table was set: stew, potatoes with meat, cabbage pasties. Anastasia ate cautiously, in small portions, as if fearing the food would be taken away. Alex, on the other hand, devoured his meal, only now realizing how hungry he was. "Poor dears," Ann Smith kept saying, giving them second helpings. "As far as I know, in those parts where you came from, only an old hermit lived. Michael Petrovich, I believe. Was that your grandpa, little one?" Anastasia nodded, not looking up from her plate. "He was a good man, though reclusive. He'd come to the village sometimes, trade furs for provisions, always fair in his dealings, and he spoke of his granddaughter. He was proud of you." Anastasia looked up, a glimmer of interest in her eyes. "Really? What did he say?" Ann Smith smiled. "He said you were a smart girl, that you caught on to everything quickly, and that you had your mother's eyes, observant, noticing everything." Anastasia managed a faint smile, her first of the entire evening. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of an approaching car. Stephen Miller looked out the window. "The sheriff's here," he announced, "and she's not alone. Some kind of superior officer with her." Soon a woman in a police uniform entered the house, stocky, with a short haircut and observant eyes. She was followed by a man in plain clothes, with a tired but sharp gaze. "Sheriff Johnson, patrol officer," the woman introduced herself. "And this is Detective Matthew Anderson from the county seat. Are you Alex Volkov?" Alex stood up. "Yes, I am." "You've been missing for a week. A missing person report was filed by your deputy, Victor Sampson. He claims you didn't return from a business meeting." Alex gave a bitter laugh. "Interesting, especially considering it was his men who tied me to a tree in the wilderness and left me to die." Sheriff Johnson exchanged glances with the detective. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" Alex spread his hands. "Only my word, and the rope marks on my wrists." The detective nodded. "We'll look into it. And the girl?" He shifted his gaze to Anastasia, who had shrunk into her chair. "She saved my life," Alex replied, instinctively shielding Anastasia with his body. "Her name is Anastasia. She lived in the wilderness with her grandpa. He passed away recently. I want to help her." Sheriff Johnson knelt beside Anastasia. "Hi, Anastasia. Don't be afraid. No one will harm you. We just want to help." Anastasia looked at her warily. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "Well, first we need to find your relatives. Maybe you have a mom, a dad, other family members." "Mom left," Anastasia repeated. "A long time ago. There's no one else." Sheriff Johnson sighed. "I see. Then we'll have to contact social services. They'll find you a temporary home while we search for your mom or other relatives." Anastasia flinched and looked at Alex. In her eyes was an unasked question, almost a plea. "I want her to stay with me for now," Alex said firmly. "I can provide everything she needs, a home, food, education." The detective shook his head. "That's impossible without a court order. There are procedures, laws." "I understand," Alex nodded, "and I'm prepared to go through all the procedures. But while this is being resolved, couldn't we make an exception? She trusts me. We've been through a lot together." Sheriff Johnson hesitated. "Theoretically, there's an option for temporary guardianship, but that requires the consent of social services, background checks, medical reports." "I'll do everything," Alex interrupted. "Any paperwork, any checks. Just don't send her to a children's home right now." The detective and the sheriff exchanged glances. Then Sheriff Johnson sighed. "All right, I can arrange temporary guardianship for a week. During that time, you must submit official documents to social services, and of course, we'll verify your suitability." Alex nodded. "Thank you. I won't let you down." He looked at Anastasia. She wasn't smiling, but a glimmer of hope sparked in her eyes. "And now," the detective said, pulling out a notepad, "I need to take your statement, in detail, from the very beginning." The next few hours passed in conversation. Alex recounted his kidnapping in detail, the days spent in the wilderness, and his encounter with Anastasia. She sat nearby, occasionally adding brief remarks to his story, but mostly remained silent, observing the adults with a watchful gaze. Late that evening, Sheriff Johnson offered to drive them to the county seat. "There's a hotel there you can rest, and in the morning we'll decide what to do next." Ann Smith threw up her hands. "A hotel at this hour? Stay with us. There's enough room, and I'll make a clean bed for you." After much debate, they decided to stay in the village for the night. In the morning, Sheriff Johnson would take them to the county seat, where Alex could contact his people. When everyone finally left, Anastasia and Alex remained in the small room where Ann Smith had made beds for them on a sofa and a cot. "How are you?" Alex asked softly, watching Anastasia sit on the edge of the sofa, clutching her satchel. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "It's strange here. Many people, many questions." "You're tired?" She nodded. "Tomorrow will be easier," Alex promised. "We'll go to the city. I'll call my people. We'll deal with this Samson character, and with your paperwork." "And then?" she asked, looking at him intently. "What happens then?" Alex sat down beside her. "Then we'll find you a good home, a school. You'll learn, grow up." "With you?" she interrupted, and in that simple question was so much hope and fear that Alex's heart ached. "If you want to," he replied softly, "and if the law allows. I'll do everything I can, Anastasia, I promise." She looked at him for a long time, as if trying to find a lie or doubt in his eyes. Then she nodded and lay down, putting her satchel under her head, as she was accustomed to doing. "Good night, Alex," she said softly. "Good night, little one," he replied, tucking her in with the blanket. The morning started early. Even before dawn, Ann Smith had stoked the stove and prepared breakfast. Anastasia awoke to the smell of pancakes and sat on the sofa for a long time, watching the hostess busy herself at the stove. "Did you sleep well, child?" Ann Smith asked, noticing Anastasia was awake. "Yes," she nodded. "I haven't slept this well in a long time." "I should think not, after all those adventures. Go wash up. Breakfast will be ready soon." Anastasia obediently went in the direction indicated. The bathroom was a new experience for her. Plumbing, a mirror, colorful bottles of shampoo and gels. She looked at herself in the mirror for a long time, as if seeing her reflection for the first time. A thin face, unevenly cut hair, serious eyes. When she returned to the kitchen, Alex was already there, freshly shaved. Stephen Miller had lent him a razor, and in a clean shirt, clearly too big for him. "Good morning," he smiled. "How did you sleep?" "Well," Anastasia replied, sitting at the table. "You?" "Excellent. First time in a real bed in days." Ann Smith placed plates of pancakes before them, drizzled with sour cream and honey. "Eat up, get your strength. It's going to be a long day." They ate in silence, enjoying the taste of the homemade food. Anastasia ate carefully, in small bites, but with obvious pleasure. After breakfast, Sheriff Johnson arrived in her patrol car. "Ready?" she asked from the doorway. "We need to go. They're waiting for us at the county seat." They said goodbye to their hospitable hosts. Ann Smith hugged Anastasia, subtly wiping away a tear. "Take care, little one, and stop by if you're ever in our neck of the woods." Anastasia awkwardly hugged her back, unaccustomed to such demonstrations of affection. The drive to the county seat took about an hour. Anastasia spent most of the journey looking out the window, studying the new world around her. Asphalt highways, road signs, oncoming cars. Alex sat beside her, occasionally glancing at her with concern. The county seat turned out to be a small town with single and two-story houses, a central square, and the administration building. That's where Sheriff Johnson brought them. "This is where the police department and social services are located," she explained. "We need to get some paperwork done." The building was cool and smelled of paper. Anastasia kept close to Alex, looking around warily. The office they were led to was cramped and cluttered with files. A middle-aged woman with a tired face and observant eyes sat at the desk. "Eleanor Parker, head of social services," Sheriff Johnson introduced her. "Eleanor, this is Alex Volkoff and Anastasia, whom I told you about." Eleanor Parker looked them both over carefully. "Please have a seat," she said, gesturing to chairs. "This is an unusual situation, but we'll work it out." She took out some forms and a pen. "All right, Anastasia. Full name?" The girl looked at Alex as if seeking support. "Anastasia," she said softly. "Anastasia Michelson." "Date of birth?" "October 15th. I'm 9. "Parents?" Anastasia lowered her eyes. "Mom, Sarah Michelson. I don't know my dad." Eleanor Parker made notes on the form. "Where is your mother now?" "I don't know. She left for the city 2 years ago. Never came back." "Were there any other relatives besides your grandfather?" Anastasia shook her head. "Grandpa said there weren't any." Eleanor Parker sighed. "I see. Now, about you, Mr. Volkoff. Do you wish to become a temporary guardian?" "Yes," Alex nodded, "and eventually a permanent one, if Anastasia agrees, of course." Eleanor Parker folded her hands on the table. "This is a serious decision. Do you understand that you will be taking full responsibility for a child?" "I understand. Do you have your own children?" "A son, 16, lives with his mother after our divorce." Eleanor Parker made a note on the form. "You'll need to gather a lot of documents. Proof of income, housing conditions, character references from your workplace, a medical certificate." "I'll do everything," Alex assured her. "How quickly can this be arranged?" Under normal circumstances, several months. But considering the unusual nature of the situation, Eleanor Parker pondered, I can arrange temporary guardianship for 3 months. During that time, you must gather all the necessary documents for permanent guardianship or adoption. Agreed, Alex nodded. What do I need to sign? The next hour was spent filling out paperwork. Anastasia sat quietly, observing the adults. Only when Eleanor Parker asked if she agreed to live with Alex Volkov did she answer firmly and without hesitation. Yes, I agree. After social services, they were taken to the police department, where Alex made an official statement about his kidnapping. He was given the opportunity to call his head of security in Denver. Gregory, it's me, Alex. Yes, I'm alive. Long story. Listen carefully. Samson tried to kill me. Yes, kill me. I was kidnapped, taken to the wilderness. No, I got out. I'm at the county seat now. The name is... He looked at Sheriff Johnson. Woodland Creek? She prompted. Woodland Creek? Send a car for me and a lawyer. There are some matters to settle. Yes, there's something else. There's a girl with me, Anastasia. I'm arranging guardianship for her. I'll explain later. Just send a car as soon as possible. He hung up and turned to Anastasia. My people will come for us soon. They'll take us to Denver. Anastasia nodded, but worry was evident in her eyes. What will it be like there? In Denver? Alex sat down beside her. It will be a new life, Anastasia. School, a home, normal clothes, books, everything you want. What if I can't do it? What if it's too much? Alex understood her fears. A girl who had grown up in the wilderness was now on the threshold of a completely unfamiliar world. We'll take it gradually, he promised, step by step, and I'll always be there to help. Anastasia looked at him for a long time, then nodded. All right, I'll try. The car from Alex's company arrived 3 hours later, a black SUV with a driver and a lawyer. Their farewells to Sheriff Johnson and Eleanor Parker were brief. Both women wished them luck and made them promise to keep in touch. The drive to Denver took several hours. Anastasia slept for most of the journey, exhausted by all the experiences. Alex discussed the details of the upcoming lawsuit with Samson and the guardianship process with the lawyer. When they entered the city, Anastasia awoke and looked out the window with wide eyes. High-rise buildings, streams of cars, hundreds of people on the streets. It was all a brand-new world to her. There's so much here, she whispered, pressed against the glass. This is just the beginning, Alex smiled. It's a big city full of interesting things. The driver brought them to a small estate on the outskirts of the city, Alex's second home, which few knew about. It will be safer here, he explained to Anastasia, until we deal with Samson. The house was spacious, but not opulent. 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, a study. Anastasia walked through the rooms, carefully touching things as if afraid they might disappear. This will be your room, Alex said, opening the door to a small bedroom with windows overlooking the garden. Tomorrow we'll buy everything you need, clothes, books, whatever you want. Anastasia stood in the middle of the room, overwhelmed by the abundance of space and possibilities. Really mine? The whole room? The whole thing, Alex nodded. You can set it up however you like. She walked to the window, looking out into the garden. There are trees out there, like in the wilderness, only neatly trimmed. Alex smiled at her precise description. Yes, there's a piece of nature here, too. Not quite the wilderness, but beautiful nonetheless. That evening, after dinner, which a restaurant courier delivered, much to Anastasia's amazement, they sat in the living room. Alex explained what would happen next. Tomorrow, a doctor will come to examine us both. Then we'll need to buy you clothes, school supplies. Next week, we'll talk to the school principal about enrolling you. Anastasia listened attentively, occasionally asking questions. School was her biggest concern. What if I can't learn? Grandpa taught me to read and write, but I've never been to a real school. We'll hire tutors for you, Alex reassured her. They'll help you catch up. You're a smart girl, Anastasia. You'll manage. She didn't look convinced, but nodded. And your son? Will he live with us? Alex sighed. Ronnie. He lives with his mother. We haven't been getting along very well lately, but I want to change that. I want him to be part of our family, too. The word family hung in the air. Anastasia looked at him intently. Do you really want me to be like your daughter? Alex met her gaze. Yes, Anastasia, if you want that, I can't replace your parents. But I can give you a home, care, opportunities to grow, and I will love you like a daughter. I already do, honestly. Anastasia was silent for a long time, pondering his words. I don't know what it's like to be someone's daughter. Besides, Grandpa, I didn't have anyone. We'll learn together, Alex said softly, day by day, without rushing. She nodded and then suddenly yawned, covering her mouth with her hand. Tired? Alex asked. No wonder. It's been a long day. Come on, I'll show you how to use the bathroom and tuck you in. Anastasia obediently followed him. The bathroom with its faucets, shower, and numerous bottles initially intimidated her, but Alex patiently explained how to use everything. When she had washed and changed into Alex's T-shirt, which served as her nightgown until she got proper clothes, he led her to the bedroom and covered her with a blanket. Good night, Anastasia, he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Good night, she replied, looking at him with a new expression, not wariness, but quiet trust. Alex, can I call you something else? Not Uncle Alex and not Dad. It's too soon for that. But something special? Alex smiled. Of course, whatever you like. Lex, she said after some thought. Can I call you that? Grandpa said close people often use shorter, more affectionate names. Something warm spread in Alex's chest. You can, little one. Of course you can. He gently stroked her hair and left, leaving the door ajar as she had asked. Left alone, Alex sat in the living room for a long time, staring into the darkness outside the window. So much had happened in those days. His life had turned upside down. His priorities had shifted. A week ago, he had thought only of the company, of deals, of money. Now all of that seemed so insignificant compared to the little girl sleeping in the next room. He took out his phone and, after a moment's hesitation, dialed his ex-wife's number. Hello? Val, it's me. Yes, I know what time it is. I'm sorry. I wanted to talk to Ronnie. I know it's late, but it's important. Okay, tomorrow. Tell him I called, all right? And that I want to see him. Yes, I'm doing well. Very well, in fact. I'll explain tomorrow. Good night. He hung up, feeling a strange relief. The first step was taken. Now he needed to mend his relationship with his son, deal with Samson, sort out affairs at the company, finalize the guardianship documents. The to-do list seemed endless, but Alex didn't feel his usual fatigue. On the contrary, he was filled with determination and a new kind of energy. With these thoughts, he went to bed, feeling a sense of peace for the first time in many days. The morning began with a phone call. Alex woke up to the persistent ringing and didn't immediately realize where he was. Then he remembered home, safety, Anastasia. "Hello," he answered, glancing at the clock. It was almost 9 o'clock. "Mr. Volkov, good morning," came the voice of his head of security. "We have news on Samson. He tried to transfer a large sum to an offshore account last night. We blocked the transaction. Looks like he's preparing to flee." "Excellent!" Alex sat up in bed. "Is there proof of his involvement in the kidnapping?" "Working on it. Checking calls, movements, indirect evidence so far, but more will come soon." "Good. Keep me updated. And Gregory, reinforce security at the house. I have a child with me. I don't want to take any risks." After the call, Alex went to check on Anastasia. Peeking into her room, he was surprised to find the bed empty. His heart sank. Had she run away, frightened by her new life? "Anastasia," he called, stepping into the hallway. "I'm here," a voice came from the kitchen. Alex hurried there. Anastasia stood by the stove, carefully flipping something in a frying pan. "Are you cooking?" he asked, surprised. "Scrambled eggs," she nodded. "Grandpa taught me. Everything's electric here. It's unfamiliar, but I figured it out." Alex smiled, watching how confidently she handled the spatula. "Thank you. You didn't have to do that." Anastasia shrugged. "I'm used to helping. Grandpa said food tastes better when you cook it yourself." They had breakfast together. The eggs were simple but delicious. Anastasia watched Alex eat with suppressed anxiety. "It's good," he praised. "You're doing great." She smiled, fleetingly but sincerely. After breakfast, Alex explained their plan for the day. "First, the doctor will come and examine us both. Then we'll go to the store, buy you clothes, books, everything you need. And in the evening—" He paused. "In the evening, my son Ronnie might come over. I called him yesterday." Anastasia tensed. "Will he be against it, me being here?" Alex sighed. "I don't know, Anastasia. He and I haven't gotten along very well lately, but I hope he'll understand. Give him a chance, okay?" She nodded, though anxiety did not leave her eyes. The doctor arrived an hour later, an older woman with kind eyes and soft hands. She examined both of them, prescribed vitamins for Anastasia, and ointment for Alex's still sore wrists. "The girl is generally healthy," she told Alex when Anastasia left the room. "A bit malnourished, signs of vitamin deficiency, but nothing serious. Remarkable, considering the conditions she lived in." "Her grandpa took good care of her," Alex replied. "To the best of his ability." The doctor nodded. "Clearly, but she needs a routine, proper nutrition, physical exercise, and possibly psychological counseling. Such changes in life don't go unnoticed." Alex agreed and asked for recommendations for child psychologists. After the doctor left, they went to the mall. For Anastasia, it was a true ordeal. So many people, noise, lights, smells. She held Alex's hand, looking around with a mix of fear and curiosity. "If it gets too much, just say so, and we'll leave," Alex whispered to her, noticing her tension. She squeezed his hand in response, but stubbornly shook her head. "I'll manage. It's just unfamiliar." In the children's department, a friendly assistant helped them. Anastasia was wary of the bright dresses and glittery T-shirts, choosing the simplest and most practical items. But when the saleswoman showed her a blue dress with embroidered stars, the girl's eyes lit up. "Do you like it?" Alex asked, noticing her reaction. Anastasia nodded shyly. Grandpa used to tell stories about the starry sky. He said stars were windows to other worlds. Try it on, Alex suggested. The dress fit. Anastasia emerged from the fitting room, awkwardly tugging at the hem, unaccustomed to such clothes. But even so, she looked at herself in the mirror with a secret delight. We'll take it, Alex decided, and everything else too. By the end of their shopping trip, they had several bags filled with clothes, shoes, school supplies, and books that Anastasia chose with particular care. Back home, they unpacked their purchases. Anastasia carefully arranged the books on the shelf, hung the clothes in the closet. Her movements were methodical, as if she were performing an important ritual. "I've never had so many things," she admitted, looking around the room. "I don't even know if I need all of this." "Get used to it," Alex smiled. "This is just the beginning." That evening, the doorbell rang. Anastasia, who was reading one of her new books, flinched and looked at Alex with alarm. "That's probably Ronnie," he said, getting up. "Don't be afraid. Everything will be fine." He went to open the door while Anastasia remained seated, clutching the book like a shield. Voices in the hallway, one Alex's, the other lower, youthful, with a hint of irritation. Then footsteps, and a tall teenager with dark hair and a grumpy expression entered the room. "Hey," he grunted, looking at Anastasia. "So you're Anastasia?" She nodded, not taking her wary gaze off him. "And you're Ronnie." He smirked. "Yeah, that's what they call me. Dad told me how you met. Quite a story." Alex entered behind him, watching their first interaction with concern. "Ronnie, please don't start. Anastasia is part of our family now." "Seriously?" Ronnie turned to his father. "You disappear for a week, then come back with some girl from the forest and say she's now part of the family? The same family you ruined 3 years ago?" "Ronnie!" Alex raised his voice, then took a deep breath, calming himself. "Let's talk in the kitchen, all right?" Ronnie shrugged and left the room. Alex turned to Anastasia. "I'm sorry. He needs time. Are you okay?" Anastasia nodded, though worry was still in her eyes. "Go talk to him. I'll stay here." Alex went to the kitchen, where Ronnie was already sitting at the table, glaring out the window. "Listen," Alex began, sitting opposite him. "I know this is unexpected, and that you and I have a lot of unresolved issues. But Anastasia has nothing to do with it. She lost the only close person she had and was left completely alone. I couldn't abandon her." "And you decided to play the savior?" Ronnie looked up at him. "How noble." "It's not about nobility," Alex shook his head. "It's about responsibility. About humanity, for that matter. Anastasia saved my life, but that's not even the main thing. She deserves a chance at a normal life." Ronnie was silent, drumming his fingers on the table. "What will Mom say?" he finally asked. "When she finds out you've taken guardianship of some kid?" "I'll talk to her," Alex replied. "Explain the situation. I think she'll understand." "Like she understood when you disappeared at work, forgetting our birthdays? Or when you canceled trips at the last minute?" Ronnie laughed bitterly. "You never knew how to put family first, Dad. What makes you think it will be different now?" His son's words hit home. Alex lowered his head. "You're right," he said softly. "I was a terrible father. I prioritized work, money, status above everything. But people change, Ronnie. Sometimes you have to be on the brink of death to understand what's truly important." He looked up at his son. "I'm not asking you to immediately accept Anastasia or forgive me. Just give us a chance. both of us." Ronnie looked at his father for a long time, as if searching for something in his face. Then he sighed. "All right, we'll see how this goes. But don't expect me to be thrilled." "Thank you," Alex said sincerely. "That's all I ask. Do you want to get to know her better? She's an amazing girl." "Maybe another time." Ronnie stood up. "I have to go. Mom's waiting." Alex walked him to the door. As he left, Ronnie stopped. "You know," he said, not looking at his father, "this is the first time I've seen something genuine in you when you talk about her." And before Alex could reply, he was gone, closing the door behind him. Alex returned to the room. Anastasia was still sitting, book in hand, but it was clear she wasn't reading. "He left?" she asked softly. "Yes." Alex nodded, sitting beside her. "He needs time, Anastasia. It's not because of you. He and I, we have a complicated relationship." She looked at him intently. "He's angry with you for not being with him." "Yes," Alex admitted, "and he has every right to be angry. I missed a lot, sacrificed a lot for work, money, success. Now I understand how foolish that was." Anastasia put down the book. "Grandpa said the most valuable things in life aren't things. It's the people around you, time spent together, memories." Alex smiled. "Your grandpa was a wise man. I wish I had met him sooner." They sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. "Lex," Anastasia called after a while, "what happens next?" "With us?" Alex put his arm around her shoulders. "Next, we live, day by day. You'll go to school, make friends. I'll sort out the company, Samson. And we'll be together as a family, if you want that, of course." Anastasia leaned against him, seeking contact so openly for the first time. "I want to try," she said softly, "to be part of a family." The following weeks flew by in a flurry of activity. Alex handled the guardianship paperwork, settled matters at the company, Samson was arrested trying to leave the country, and prepared Anastasia for school. They hired tutors who were surprised to find that the girl, who had grown up in the wilderness, possessed excellent basic knowledge. Grandpa had indeed taken her education seriously, using the few books they had. "She picks up everything quickly," the math teacher said after one session, "especially anything related to practical skills. I think by the start of the school year, she'll be fully ready for 4th grade." Alex was proud of Anastasia. Her perseverance, diligence, and sharp mind all filled him with genuine admiration. Ronnie visited a few more times. At first, he kept his distance, but gradually began to thaw, especially after Anastasia showed him how to properly start a fire without matches, a skill she was very proud of. "She's unusual," Ronnie told his father after one visit. "Not like other kids." "Yes," Alex agreed. "Anastasia is special. She's been through more than you or I can imagine, but she's remained pure, genuine." Ronnie nodded. "You know, I thought you took her in to, I don't know, make yourself feel better, to fix things with me. But now I see that you really care about her." "I do care," Alex confirmed. "And about you too, son. I've always cared. I just showed it the wrong way. I thought providing for the future was more important than being present in the moment." Ronnie was silent, then said softly, "Maybe we can try again. You, me, Anastasia. See what happens." Alex felt a lump in his throat. "We definitely will, son. We definitely will." The start of the school year was approaching. Anastasia grew increasingly nervous, though she tried not to show it. Alex decided to arrange a surprise for her, the evening before her first day of school. "Let's go," he said, looking into her room where she was carefully stacking textbooks into her new backpack. "I want to show you something." "What?" she asked, interested. "You'll see," Alex smiled. "It's a surprise." They got into the car and drove out of the city. Anastasia looked out the window with interest, trying to guess where they were going. When the road turned into a forest, she tensed. "Are we going to the wilderness?" "Not exactly," Alex replied, "but close." They drove a few more miles and stopped in a small clearing. The sun was already setting, painting everything in golden hues. "Come on." Alex got out of the car and offered her his hand. They walked across the clearing to a small hill. At the top stood a young cedar, newly planted, judging by the fresh earth around it. "What is this?" Anastasia asked, stopping beside the tree. Alex knelt down to be at her eye level. "I thought you might miss the wilderness, the home where you grew up, and your grandpa. So I planted this tree for you, so you can come here whenever you want to remember." Anastasia looked at the tree, then at Alex, and tears glistened in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, touching the slender trunk. "Grandpa loved cedars. He said they live longer than people and remember more." Alex took a small wooden box from his pocket. "One more thing. Open it." Anastasia took the box and carefully lifted the lid. Inside lay a simple silver chain with a pendant in the shape of a small pine cone. "Is this for me?" she asked, disbelief in her eyes. "For you," Alex nodded. "So you'll always remember where you came from, and know that you have a place to return to." Anastasia took out the chain, examining the pendant in the light of the setting sun. "Will you help me put it on?" she asked softly. Alex fastened the chain around her neck. Anastasia touched the pendant, and then, unexpectedly for both of them, hugged him tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Alex hugged her back, feeling a tear roll down his cheek. "Thank you, Anastasia, for saving me, not just in the wilderness, but here." He touched his heart. "Inside." They stood there, embracing by the young cedar, until the last rays of the sun disappeared below the horizon. Ahead lay the night, and then a new day, a new life, together. A year later, they returned to the cedar. But this time, Ronnie was with them too. The tree had grown, strengthened, just like their small, unusual family. Anastasia, now a fourth grader, an honor student, and a winner of a science Olympiad, took a small trowel from her backpack. "What are you doing?" Ronnie asked, watching her dig a small hole at the base of the tree. "I want to bury something," she replied, taking a small bundle from her pocket. "Grandpa said the earth holds our secrets better than any safe." Alex moved closer. "What's in there?" Anastasia unwrapped the cloth. 3 items lay in her palm: an old broken compass, a knife with a red handle, and a small photograph. 3 smiling people against the backdrop of that very cedar a year ago. "The compass because I found my way," she said softly. "The knife because I'm no longer afraid and don't need to defend myself. And the photo because this is my new home, my family." She carefully placed the bundle in the hole and covered it with earth. Then she straightened up and looked at Alex and Ronnie. "Done," she smiled. "Now we can go home." They were walking back to the car when Anastasia suddenly stopped and looked at Alex. "You know," she said, "Grandpa said everyone has 2 homes, one where they were born, and another they find themselves. I think I found my second home." Alex put his arm around her shoulders, looking at Ronnie, who was smiling at them both. "And we're happy you found us, my daughter," he said. calling her that for the first time. And Anastasia didn't correct him, because now it was true. She was a daughter of the wilderness, strong and wise. But now she was also Alex Volkov's daughter, and for the first time in her life she felt she belonged to someone completely and unconditionally. "Let's go home," she said, taking both their hands. "Tomorrow will be a good day." And they walked together, a small, unusual, but truly real family. Many days lay ahead of them, both good and challenging. But the most important thing was that they would face them together, as it should be.